Thanks for being so open about that. It's not always easy to discuss. So tell me, what would you say motivates you most in your work? That's a great point, and I appreciate you sharing it. Given everything you've experienced, what does your ideal work environment look like? Good to hear that. Now, shifting gears a little, have you ever had to manage a difficult stakeholder or client? Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. One thing I'm curious about, how do you typically handle tight deadlines? Right. I can see why that would be challenging. In situations like that, how do you usually decide what to prioritize? We're building out our leadership team, and we really need people who can mentor others. Have you had any experience leading or coaching junior team members? One thing we value here is a strong sense of ownership. Can you give me an example of a time you took full responsibility for a project outcome? We move fast here, and that means things change quickly. How comfortable are you with ambiguity and rapid change? Collaboration is a big part of our culture. When you disagree with a colleague's approach, how do you handle that? We're looking for people who are constantly growing. What's something new you've learned in the past 6 months, professionally or personally? Before we wrap up, I'd love to give you a chance to sell yourself a little. Take a moment and tell me what makes you stand out from other candidates. We care a lot about culture fit here. So, in your own words, describe what kind of team you do your best work in. I'd like to understand your decision making process a bit better. Walk me through how you'd approach a problem you've never faced before. Let's talk about your future for a moment. Tell me where you see your career heading over the next few years. We always like to understand people's motivations. Explain what drew you to this industry in the first place. I noticed you had a career change a few years back. That kind of transition takes courage. Tell me about what led you to make that decision. We work with a lot of different stakeholders here. Describe a situation where you had to adapt your communication style significantly. Onboarding here can be intense, lots of information quickly. Walk me through how you approach learning something completely new on the job. I see you've worked in both large companies and startups. That's an interesting mix of experiences. Compare those two environments for me. What did you take from each? Everyone handles stress differently. Give me an example of a high pressure situation you faced and how you kept yourself focused. We put a lot of emphasis on transparency here. So I have to ask, what's something you wish you could have done differently in your last role? This role involves a lot of cross functional work. That means dealing with people who have very different priorities. How do you navigate that? Growth is important to us, both for the company and the individual. What kind of professional development opportunities are you looking for? Culture is something we take seriously. It's not just a buzzword for us. What does a healthy workplace culture mean to you? Feedback is a big part of how we grow. We give it and we expect to receive it. How do you typically respond when you receive critical feedback? Quick one. Are you comfortable presenting to senior leadership? Just out of curiosity, do you have any side projects or personal interests that relate to this field? One more thing. Would you be open to occasional travel for this role? Before I forget, what's your current notice period? Last question from me. Is there anything about this role or the company that concerns you? We'd love to understand what you're looking for. What are your salary expectations? And what's most important to you in your next role? The team, the mission, or the compensation? Let's talk about the future. Where do you see yourself in 3 years, and what would success look like for you in this position? I want to make sure we're aligned. What questions do you have for us, and is there anything you'd like to know about day to day life here? We value both independence and teamwork. Can you describe a time you worked completely solo on a project, and how does that compare to how you prefer to work? Think about your best manager ever. What made them great, and what's one thing you wish they had done differently? We've interviewed a lot of strong candidates for this role, and honestly, the technical bar is high. But we found that what really separates people is how they think through problems under pressure. So, with that in mind, how do you approach a situation where you have incomplete information but still need to make a decision quickly? One thing I always like to explore in interviews is resilience, because every job has tough moments, and we want people who can push through. Can you share a time when you failed at something important and what you learned from it? We're a values driven company, and every decision we make is filtered through our core principles. That can sometimes slow things down, but we believe it's worth it. How important is it to you that the company you work for has a clear set of values? And do you have your own set of professional values? A lot of people say they're collaborative, but what that actually looks like in practice varies enormously from person to person. Some people like to share work early and get constant feedback. Others prefer to work independently and share when things are polished. Where do you fall on that spectrum? We're growing internationally, and that brings a lot of complexity. Different time zones, different cultures, different ways of working. Have you worked in a globally distributed team before? And if so, what did you find most challenging about it? Your background spans a few different industries, which is actually really interesting to us. I'm curious, why did you choose to move from finance into tech? We've been talking for a while now, and I feel like I have a good sense of your experience. What I'd love to understand better is how you handle conflict within a team. Before we finish up, there's one area I haven't asked about yet. I'd love to know, what do you do outside of work to recharge? Something I always find revealing is this. When was the last time you changed your mind about something important because of new information? We've covered a lot of ground today. The last thing I want to ask is, what's one thing you hope we remember about you after this interview? Honestly, we've been really impressed so far. That said, I do want to push a little. What's the hardest professional feedback you've ever received? Nicely put. I want to follow up on that. How did the rest of the team respond to your approach? Sure, that all makes sense. Can you take me back to the beginning of that project and explain how it got started? Exactly the kind of thing we look for. Now I'm wondering, how do you stay current with trends in your field? Great example. What would you do differently if you had the chance to run that project again?